Thank you all. I think I'll hand it over to our next panel of about interdisciplinary work. Thank you, Kelly and Annie, so much for being here. Thank you.
Move. Is this on? How's everybody feeling after lunch? Yeah? We're here? Yeah? Okay, we're here. We have 3 microphones. Okay. Oh, 4 microphones. Sweet. Maybe we'll just quickly say our names and I'll do a little intro, then we'll get into some conversation if that makes sense. But Bridget Sumser, social worker by training and health educator nowadays.
Eve Cohen, and I'm the nurse program coordinator for outpatient palliative care at UCSF.
Ann Kinderman, I'm a palliative care physician, and I see patients in the 2 outpatient palliative care clinics here at UCSF, and I also do palliative care consults at the Jewish Home.
Gayle Kojimoto, I'm a program manager for a number of programs in the DPM, and I'm standing in for Natalia Johnson, who isn't able to be here today.
Okay, we are so excited to be here to talk with you about interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary, interprofessional palliative care. And I want you to humor me with an experiment for a sec. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. If you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, just bring your gaze inward for a sec. And I want you to think about team. I want you to think about the people you practice with, the people you refer to, the people who take care of you. And find a moment within that just kind of speaks what the best of teamwork is to you. And let's just conjure that feeling together, where every single person in this room has been touched by team. We continue to be. It's probably why a lot of us are in this room. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about how that's come to be in the division and what we hope for in the future. We talked a lot last night about drinking from wells we didn't dig. And so I would be remiss if I didn't just bring a few names forward of the folks interprofessionally that have carved out this space for us. This will not be exhaustive. Jane Hoggad, Dina Joseph, Susan Barber, Karen Skanke, Rod Seeger, Tom Bookwater, Jane Hirsch, Carol Mowbray, Julie Koppel, Nancy Shepard-Lopez, and Sarah Holland. So many people have come and worked before us to make it possible for us to practice in a non-traditional way, in a system that really, really, really wants us to keep traditional concepts of medicine at the center of what we do. And by nature of us wanting to do it differently, we are doing something revolutionary and against the grain. And I think sometimes we take that for granted because it's just what we do. It's what we know how to do. And it seems obvious to us, but actually it's not obvious. And so we're going to talk about that more. The Division of Palliative Medicine took this really powerful clinical imprint for how to do teamwork and is working really hard to walk the talk in all other areas of our work. We have pretty phenomenal integration of interprofessional practice in program development, research, the leadership structure, faculty appointments, PCLC, faculty, interprofessional team members represent the division in the community, across campus, across campuses. And I just want to sort of pay deep respects to all of the folks in the community doing this work, and also to the leadership that has said, like, let's do this, and let's do it in a real way, and let's talk about how we're saying that we're doing it, but we're not quite. Can we move into more spaces? Can we push up against more edges and really try and do this with as high integrity as possible? So I want to turn to our panel and to hear from you all really about what team is to you. And so I want to know, why do we practice as a team in palliative medicine? Anybody can start. Oh, and we should say we have no chaplains here. And so we're sending, I know we're on Zoom, and so we're sending love to our chaplains that are all occupied today and holding your presence here with us today. Why team?
Why team?
Why team?
So I am a huge believer in team. I started, my nursing career and my palliative care career kind of one and the same to me in HIV, and I was very lucky to work in a community-based clinic in Baltimore. And it was a complete team, and I thought that's how medicine was. And it's been a long journey to get back to what I consider a true interprofessional, multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary. What word are we using?
Take your choice.
Team.
Take your pick.
Okay. I like interprofessional.
I like
gonna use it.
interprofessional too. We
I
could
know.
have a talk on that.
And so I feel that we can't do this work without each other. I feel that we each add our own piece, and then our pieces all overlap. I feel that we all each have our expertise. I've learned so much from all of the different professions, and I just feel like it can't be done any other way. And I feel so lucky to practice that way. I think that our patients and families need all of us, and the more that we can support our patients and families and referring providers and all of UCSF together as sort of a big force, I think the better we are. And I think we each take on a role, and that role sort of adds to how well we care for patients.
Yeah, I think a thing I would add for those who have worked with or heard B.J. Miller talk, one of the ways that he's described palliative care is sort of medicine. We have specialties that focus on a disease process, like cancer. We have specialties that focus on an organ system, like the heart. And palliative care's focus is on suffering and alleviating suffering. And when you think about that, there's no one discipline in healthcare that can address all of the different forms of suffering. And even in our best interdisciplinary team, we don't have all of the skills that we would need. Ultimately, all of the suffering that comes from the insurance system and things that, it's way beyond. More Congress people on our palliative care teams, but... So I think that that's a really big one, and when I don't get to practice with a team member with me or in close collaboration, I really feel that. I feel the lack, and I feel just so like there's no way I would be able to do the work were it not for years of working alongside incredibly skilled social workers, chaplains, and nurses, and everyone. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. And then the thing I'll say, I think, as I get deeper into this work and doing clinical work in palliative care, is also holding these incredibly hard stories together with a team. It is not the same if I'm seeing someone totally by myself and hearing these stories and hearing the situation and doing what I can versus if Eve is in a visit with me. So I think that that's really important as we think about sustainability for our field too.
I think the team is so important because we each meet patients at like this discrete point, right? Different discrete points, and we each bring our own perspectives to that. And so we get this multifaceted view when we work together. And even as an admin who, when I worked in the clinic, it was different, right? I don't have any training. medical training, nursing, social work training, but to connect with the patients and be able to report back to the team, like, I think something's going on here under the surface, and then have the team report back to me like, oh, like, yeah, thanks for letting us know, and just kind of getting this full picture. And it requires all of us, from the front line to the person on the phone to the people in the room, to make that team.
I feel like one of the things I'm hearing is that, like, we really need each other. Like, this isn't a nice to have, and of course we're very fortunate to have it, but it's also like a base need if we're gonna live out this promise that we've made about palliative care being whole person care.
It makes me think about what Bob Wachter said this morning about the Net Promoter Score. You know, I would argue, even though that's a physician survey, that, you know, we've all contributed to that high score. And,
Yeah.
and I think that the need is 100% reflected in that number.
Yeah, totally. I feel like there's such a different experience of sharing, right? The thing that we're actually trying to practice, which is complicated and not without conflict, is how do we actually share a sense of responsibility and attending to extraordinary complication in people's life. Right. Can you identify a moment of, like, just what's so satisfying, like, satisfying about team? If you think satisfaction, like, what comes to your mind?
We'll switch up who goes first. Yeah. You know, I think there is nothing like when I've been able to work on teams and we've gotten to know each other well enough to understand different skills, and to just kind of know that I'm in a really hard place in a conversation and I'm stuck and I can pause, and then Greg jumps in. And has a really wonderful thing to say that moves the conversation a different place. So it's sort of like, to me, it's like a symphony. You know, it's just really recognizing and being able to count on your team members who are in the room with you to be able to meet the needs.
I think back to the dance that you did earlier. That's really when you see that harmony, the symphony just kind of working together seamlessly. It's just so beautiful. And when you hear from patients and families, like, the impact that the team has, like, it just feels so fulfilling.
Yeah, I agree. And I think I can think back to so many visits. I often say, oh, I wish we could have recorded this for teaching purposes, because they're like the perfect sort of visit, you know, where every team member was able to contribute, and we don't somehow interrupt each other, which I can't believe. And we're often thinking the same things, and it's just, and you know, you're just providing this just excellent level of care that everyone's contributing to. And it's very satisfying as the clinician, and you know, we've gotten very positive feedback from patients and families, and that feels great too.
What's something that you've learned from a profession other than your own that's changed your practice, your way of working? Whose voice do you hear in your head?
I guess I'm starting from this one. So Judy Long was the chaplain in SMS and does our resiliency workshops. She talked a lot about the A of grace, which is attunement. And I actually apply that throughout my life when I remember, which is not always a lot, but just like taking the time to think about, what am I bringing into the room with me that may be coloring my emotions, my feeling, my perspectives. What is the person I'm meeting with, or my child often, what are they bringing in to this conversation that, you know, they went to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning, or they're suffering from pain. that is affecting how they're going to interact with me, and try and just bring that, I guess, mindfulness that we're not 100%. And so to give space to whoever's in the room, what we're all feeling. And it really has, when I use it, worked really well.
It's so hard to remember.
You need to like
Tattoo it.
Yeah. God, so much. You know, I didn't learn this from anyone in this room, but I did learn it from a social worker who I learned when someone's crying in a visit, you could say, "What are your tears about?" And I think about that all the time. And it was something, you know, I just heard someone say. But there's so many things. I mean, how to do a spiritual screen, chaplains. Like, I would never know how to do that, or just even know how important the existential distress. You know it when you're seeing it as a clinician, but you don't know where to go or who to send them to or how to deal with it. And so I feel like that. And then from physicians, I mean, I've learned, like Steve said, I mean, we didn't know anything about ALS. I didn't know anything about ILD, and I've been a nurse a long time. And their knowledge, their breadth of knowledge base is just astonishing to me. And I've learned so much. So I feel like every day I'm learning from my colleagues.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind a lot, I think in the culture of physicians and physician training, I think there's a lot of just kind of subconscious assumption that you're kind of a robot, that you can go from really hard situation to really hard situation and just keep chugging along without any consequences. And that hasn't worked out that well for us. But I remember actually it was at a PCQN event years ago, and Dina Joseph was talking and about, I think, resiliency and things, and talked about this analogy that I brought up to Eve last night when we were driving home from the dinner. Yeah, and just this idea around, like, it's a reasonable coping mechanism. It's like having a junk closet, and you sort of stuff something in the junk closet and you close the door, and you keep doing that with each of these experiences, and it works for a while until one day you open up the door and it all comes crashing down on you. And that really fundamentally changed how I thought about processing the vicarious trauma and the suffering that we see, and kind of more checking in with myself around that, which I think is, it helps my patients indirectly perhaps, but is critical, and certainly was never going to be part of anything that another physician told me about.
What's the dream? What are we not doing yet that we could be doing?
Let's see. We have to keep building our teams. It is so hard to continue. Our healthcare system makes this incredibly hard. I was thinking about the UK, and do they do anything differently? I don't know, but it just, I was thinking, insurance companies need to be here in the room and hear the good palliative care does. I think we need to think creatively how to, there are almost no outpatient chaplains. There's no outpatient social worker, or few, doing the kind of work Greg does as a palliative care outpatient social worker. There's very few outpatient nurses. There's just not a lot of innovation in how to use these disciplines that are so imperative. So I'm not a big researcher, but I feel that, we gotta prove to somebody, whether it's insurance companies, whether it's it's funders or whether it's UCSF, you know, how imperative that we cannot do this work without our disciplines and our team. And we can't grow in the way we want to grow without that.
Yeah, triple underscore exclamation mark. And I think I will just say this is borne out. So I've been fortunate to be involved in some policy work related to Medi-Cal and palliative care benefit in California. And if you look at those teams, how they're composed, 100% of the respondents that we had in surveys have a social worker. Not 100% have physicians or chaplains, certainly, or nurses. And that's because of the needs of that population. So when you have the flexibility around how these things are designed and paid for, then you make a team kind of that fits the needs of your population better and thoughtfully, hopefully. The thing I will say is an extra plug that's we haven't brought up yet is, but it was in the conversation about the working group, is more community health workers, navigators, people who can help extend the reach of what we're doing, particularly across language and culture. And I would love to see more and more of that as core in our teams and particularly in our outpatient work.
Ditto. I think just broadening the team, like, as we said, into the community, into other departments, right? We've got surgery, we've got neurology, like just keep pushing out, make the ripples bigger. Because this is, I mean, I say this to lots of people, but I feel like palliative care, how we treat patients and families in palliative care is how they should be treated everywhere. And we just need to keep pushing that forward.
I mean, I feel like an important connector to that, Gayle, is like, you are not here because Natalia is not here, right? Like this has been, you know, we're constantly opening our eyes to what we could not see before, right? And we don't have enough of these basic 4 team members: social work, physician, chaplain, nursing. And we can get so focused on we need more of them, that we don't really think about, oh yes, we have this huge administrative team that makes our lives possible, that makes our services possible, and they need to be here. And, you know, I'm excited for the next panel 25 years ago, hopefully I'll be retired, where this line is much longer, and there's people that we would have never imagined sitting up here. Physical therapists, yes, and beyond and beyond. I would love to just open it up to you guys for 1 second in case there's something you want to share about team before we move on to the next piece, or if there's questions. This is such a central thing to all of our experience.
We do have time for questions, so. Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, you're there. I'm taking the mic.
I actually really appreciate that last comment, Bridget, and I was just going to say something very similar, which is I was just noticing that personally, owning it for myself, I've talked about clinical team members so much, and we talk about spiritual care, social work, nurses, physicians, and nurse practitioners oftentimes, but I wanted to acknowledge and sort of like mea culpa big time that I don't mention practice coordinators, and I don't mention clinic leadership, wherever Chris Pollock is, and I don't mention the divisional staff, Kat Lee, and everyone else, you know, as often as we should. So I just wanted to really take this opportunity to say that we couldn't do this without you.
Maybe we can take a minute and have anybody in the room who's a non-clinical team member stand up so that we can clap your praises. Yeah? Ben, I think Ben's here, Kat's here. Or we'll just clap for you if you don't want. The bread pudding is heavy, I get it.
Our IT folks.
Yeah, Steve. Oh, here.
Maybe just a couple comments. First, I just want to thank thank you for this panel, and thanks for the work. And I guess to recognize it, I think medicine is so hierarchical, and we're still working in an incredibly hierarchical system. So I think this is another one of those places where we're just like swimming upstream and trying to change the culture in the ways that we can, and that's really important. But just to recognize that, out there, as soon as we leave 1496, it's a really different world, and how we all kind of act as a team, not just in our teams, but kind of outside in the world, is really important to continue to promote interprofessional care and sort of how we treat each other, but how we treat our colleagues as well. And also to acknowledge, I think, the really important role that, each of us have played, kind of this leadership role in advancing interprofessional care. And I just want to shout out to our interprofessional team, beyond the doctors, just the leadership in really helping us think about those issues. I wish I could say that that was my idea, but it wasn't my idea, and I really appreciate the push. And I think Greg asked about the conflict and where you get the pushback, and I think these are places where we've gotten appropriate pushback to really think differently about how we practice. And anyway, and I really appreciate that kind of pushing. I think Irene was saying, you have to think differently or rethink something, and it's been a really important opportunity to do that and to learn a lot.
I wanted to make a comment on what's the dream. And I feel like there's actually a team that doesn't exist very often that's missing in the whole system, which is a home-based palliative program. Having done that, having watched them ebb and flow, having done hospice care and the amazing way that the teams are balanced in hospice, with all the disciplines contributing in a different way, less hierarchical, is that I think that the dream, not in 25 years, but is that whole component of home-based, where it's those patients that would, whether it's a community worker or clinic or telehealth, it's not enough. So I wanted to name that I think there's a whole team missing, and a different model that would emerge from that.
Oh yeah. Kelly and Annie, will you come back and join us for a full session Q&A? Yeah. Are there questions for Kelly and Annie about anything in the community? Yeah, Donnie.
Hey, I don't really have a question, but I just wanted to say, I've been working with the Chinese community for, the last 12 years, but to hear Annie say that she got 300 Chinese-speaking patients to do an advance directive is a miracle. You don't understand, that is music to my ears. I've only been seeing patients come in with an advance directive from that community in the last 2 years. I have not seen that in all the years I've been doing this, so congrats, Annie.
And I will say also, as someone who's had the privilege of being part of the task force and the working group, it is really a model around interdisciplinary, interprofessional, and really the community, which is, I think, what's made it so powerful through the years. Yeah.
What's your dream?
This is the moment you're supposed to have your elevator pitch ready, I think. I have many. I would really love for us to have an interprofessional fellowship. I feel like it would take our already state-of-the-art, nationally acclaimed training to a really next level, to be training social workers and nurse practitioners and spiritual care and next to, just our extraordinary physician colleagues. So let's do it. Do you need a break? Yeah? No, no break. You don't get a break, sorry. All right. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.